Hi everybody, and welcome to our Lutheran Service Builder training webinar. This is our fourth and final webinar in a series of 4 webinars about Lutheran Service Builder. We're going to be talking about adding additional worship elements today. Again, my name's Anna Johnson. I'm a marketing manager here at Concordia Publishing House. You can see my email and my phone number up there on the screen. I know some of you today might have been expecting Peter Frank, who did our first 2 webinars in this series. He's feeling a little bit under the weather today, so he asked me to fill in for him. So hopefully we'll still be able to cover everything and get everything going today. A few items of housekeeping before we get started. We'll have about 50 minutes for a presentation today and 10 minutes for questions. Now, I did go a little short on my presentation this morning, so I might end a little bit early on this one as well. It also depends on what questions you have. If you have questions, it might go longer. If you don't, we might end a little bit early. Hope that's okay. You're always allowed to ask questions throughout. If I'm able to address it in that moment, that's great, I will. If I don't see it right away, that's also fine too. I can answer it at that time. Also, the recording will be shared, so if you need to step out for a minute, deal with someone in your church office to help them, or if you need to leave or want to share this with somebody else at your church, you can definitely do that as soon as possible. A little bit about Concordia Publishing House. Just by the fact that you're here today, I would imagine that most of you know about Concordia Publishing House since you're using Lutheran Service Builder, but we are the publishing arm of the LCMS, and we've been around since 1869 to support you in that work of serving and proclaiming the gospel to those who most need it in your churches. A few assumptions today. I want to assume that you're proficient with Lutheran Service Builder. Since this is the 4th and final webinar in these builder trainings, I imagine that you either watched the other ones or you know the material covered. If not, just go over to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to see everything that you need that's associated with these. Excuse me. I'm also assuming you've trained others on this software. You might be the main contact at your church. Because this training webinar is about adding those additional worship elements to Lutheran Service Builder, we're kind of thinking that you're at a higher level than some of the others at your church. We also think that you're eager to add your own content. We're going to be showing you how to add all different types of content today. So we want to make sure that you know how to do that and you're excited about that. And we also, as all of you know, are very busy. We're busy here, so we want to make sure that we're making the most of your time. Next thing I want to do is to tell me about yourself, so if you guys can answer the quick poll on the screen there and let me know. I know in our earlier session we had quite a mix, but today it looks like I think we have a mix between pastors, office administrators, and then one person there who was our service planner today. So thanks for letting me know. That'll help us to tailor our presentation today. A few of our goals for today. I want to show you guys how to use My Worship resources in Lutheran Service Builder, create, export, and import custom services, and import creative worship elements. And then we'll also talk about importing LetUsPray files. So really we're going to spend the bulk of our time on this first bullet point here, and then I'll breeze through the rest. This My Worship resources is the most involved of probably all the trainings we're doing today. So I want to make sure that you guys know exactly how that's working. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about is My Worship resources, and we're going to go through the following elements. We're going to show you how to add a collect or a prayer. I'm going to talk about common elements, so an as we gather statements and a prayer of the church, and then I'm also going to show you how to add a hymn in. So let me just get Lutheran Service Builder up here. Here's my home screen, and you have a couple options from the home screen there to really get started. You can either click on My Worship resources over here, or you can use this top icon that is for your My Worship resources. Now I'm going to just delete all these old ones in here so that we can start afresh today so that you can see exactly how you would be doing it. You're not relying on me to do that for you. So there we go. So the first thing we're going to add in today is a collect, and you can see in this list over here all of these boxes are kind of expandable and collapsible. The first thing is a collect, and for those of you who might not be very familiar, a collect is just a prayer that we say during the church service. It's usually about a special occasion or topic, and it usually corresponds with the readings for that week, or with something that's going on in the world. And one of the things that's going on in our world here in St. Louis today is there's a lot of flooding. So we might at our churches say a special prayer for the flooding victims today, and we'd want to add that into Builder. So to do that, you just click on the collects, and then you go over here. You can see you have two options. You can add a actual collect element in or a folder for collects. So if you anticipate adding a lot of different types of collects, you might want to use this folder. But for me, I think I'm just going to add this one, so I'll click on this new button. And then here's your screen here. The first thing you want to do is add your name in. You can add the name either over here or over here, and they're synced to each other so they automatically update. So if I wanted to call this Prayer for Missouri Flooding Victims, I can do that right here. And as soon as I click out, you can see that it updates here. If I change something, if I take out victims over here, it'll change it over here on my right-hand side. If you were taking this collect from a book and you wanted to write the page number in, you could do that there. If there was an index that were you could do that. If you're a pastor and you like to write your own collects to align with the pericopes for the week, you can add the related scripture verses in here and then add also the related topics. So if your topic was flooding and then your topic was natural disasters, you could add these. Just remember to add one per line. If you don't add one per line, Builder's going to kind of add them all together and get a little bit confused. The other things you can do with your collects are add in authors or copyrights. To do that, all you would do is click on this Authors tab, click on New, and then enter the name of your author if you knew them, the birth date, the death date, whether their translation. Same with copyrights, you would click on New, put in your copyright holder. If it's public domain, you can mark that. Otherwise, you would select from a list of copyright holders over here. Also, any additional notes or text you can add right there. After doing that, you would probably want to add the main text of your collect in. So let me just get that up in my outline right here. And this was just an example that I had pulled off the LCMS website of one they had done in the case of another time that there was flooding. So a few notes we want to change here. First of all, we don't need to replicate the title because we have its own title in Builder. The next thing you'll want to do, you probably don't want to have this be italicized, so you can just select it all. Just use your regular keyboard shortcuts like Control-A, and then you can select this italics button, and you can see it makes it bold or italic, whatever you want it to do. Now, something we know that churches do, or at least my church does, is sometimes we break up the prayers so that pastor speaks part and then we speak part back. You guys might know how to do that if you're familiar with creative worship. So to do something like that, the first thing you want to do is break up your prayer into sections. Now you could just start adding these little icons here before, but I find it easier if you do it this way. So just give yourself a few lines and spaces for each different section in your prayer. And I'm going to just, did that wrong. There we go. So I'm going to have maybe 4 sections in this prayer. Once you have your sections divided up, you can start adding the different parts in. So maybe we'll have pastor do the merciful Lord portion of the prayer. So all I did, again, was click on the text that I want to be associated with a certain person or group. And then you select which of these it would be. So maybe we'll have men do this part. So you click it, and then you click the actual button. So we'll have women do this next part. I'll select the text, click on this arrow, select women, and then select the main button here. And then maybe we'll have everybody all together say this last part. So select text, select people, and then click the actual people button, and then we'll have pastor finish out the prayer. So I'll just select him and then do that. Now you might want to even add some additional notes in here. You could do that right in this collect screen, or you could add a special rubric. I'm just going to add it right in the collect screen today because that saves us a little bit of time. So we'll say like men speak the parts in italics, and then women speak bold and italicized. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here, and I can change the formatting. So I'll change this one to be the men's part, this one to be the women's part, and our collect's actually looking pretty good. But you guys might be wondering, that's great, what does this look like in my bulletin? So we'll show you that next. So I'm going to just click Save here so it saves my collect. Then I'm going to go back to my home screen and just select a Sunday from my calendar view. We'll say the fourth Sunday of Easter, and I actually have a couple services started here, and I'll just go over and plan this service. I'm going to find the section in the service where the collects usually are. So I don't really want to eliminate the collect of the day. I want to add a new collect in, and you can see this alert sign's letting me know that my old prayer is actually missing, so I can actually delete that. And then we'll add our additional collects in here. So if I wanted to switch this out, I wanted to insert a collect underneath here. If I click in this Browse button, let me just add a no. Sometimes my computer's a little bit slow. So I search for my flooding prayer, and then I can just add this in right here. Now if I wanted to replace the collect of the day with this prayer, I would actually click on the collect of the day and then replace it this way. And it'll give Builder just a minute to search. So you can always either replace or insert additional collects here, but you can see that this is the kind of formatting we used. And then if I want to see what it looks like in my bulletin, all I need to do is select this bulletin view, and then once I get down to the collects section here, you can see that our Missouri flooding prayer is here, and then each additional part is there. Now if I get in my service outline and I realize that something's not exactly the way I like it, I can also edit it straight from in here, and that makes it really easy to do. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is actually create a different type of element, and this is going to be a common element. So a collect is kind of its own thing, its own prayer. A common element could be any number of things that are inserted into different points of the service. So you might have a common element that goes in the place of the Kyrie. Maybe your church does different things there, or you might have a common element that's not really associated with any specific liturgical part, but it's just something that your church uses on a regular basis. So for common elements, maybe you want to actually add folders for these. So we're going to add an As We Gather here. And an As We Gather is actually something from Creative Worship that I'm just using an example of here. But it's a just kind of pre-church statement that your members can use to reflect on the theme for the day. So when you're adding a common element, you'll see that this is kind of flipped from the view before, whereas like you would enter the title over on the right before, now you can enter it over on the left. And I'll just name it, and the same naming principles apply. If I enter the name here, it's updated in the middle here. If I update it in the middle here, it's updated in the other spots. So we could say, As We Gather Easter 4. Just going to click enter. If it was one of those elements that's related with a specific portion in your worship service, so say maybe you had a different version of the Lord's Prayer if you sang it, not that you would change the actual words, but maybe you had a setting of the Lord's Prayer and you wanted it to be available in that Lord's Prayer space in the bulletin, you could give it a shared role. But since this is not something like that, we're not going to give it a shared role. If it was any of these three things, proper reading or collect, you could select that here. Again, this is neither of those things, so we're just going to leave it blank. And then let me get my text here. Just going to copy and paste it over as I did before. And again, please do remember to remove the title, otherwise you'll have a duplicate title and you'll have to remove it later. The same options we had before are here, so if you wanted to add this symbol for pastor, if you wanted to responsorialize an element, you could do that here. You can also add authors and copyrights. Please be sure to do that if you're taking your data from another source so that you're giving credit where credit is due to people. This is a pretty simple common element though, so I'm just going to save it right now. And now when I go back to my bulletin, actually I can probably just go right here to my service plan. And I go up here You can see this is my old As We Gather for Easter 4. I can just click and drag and move my new As We Gather in here. And it should be all good to go. Oh, it looks like I didn't save the last one. But let me just see if I can find it. Oh, it looks like I didn't add it in. Anyway, all you would do, I'm going to go back to my common elements. We'll save this. There we go. Hopefully this time when I go back, everything will preview as it should in the bulletin. Sometimes my computer here is on a network connection and it gets a little bit slow, so I'm sorry about that. But again, it's that same process that we followed for adding a collect. Okay. We did the As We Gather. Let's work on the prayer of the church next. And the prayer of the church is kind of that big prayer that everybody uses during church, especially after the offering, after the sermon. And if you didn't know already, the LCMS has some prayers of the church already on their website written up, and there's a couple ways you can do this. You could go to their website, you could take the Word document out and just copy and paste this into My Worship Resources, which is what we're doing today. The other thing we can do is actually just create a common element for those things and cut and paste them in there. So what we're going to do, we'll add the common element. I'm going to do new common element right here. And I'll have this be prayer of the church for ascension. Okay. Next thing I'll do is just copy and paste, simple as that, Control C. And then I think this is especially the type of element that you would want to responsorialize. So we would have this, pastor would say, let us pray for everybody according to their needs. I'm going to just click on the pastor button there. We don't want to really add anything for this brief silence portion. And then the next thing I'm going to want to do is separate out these Hear Our Prayers, because most likely in your church, I think the congregation usually says Hear Our Prayer, and then the pastor will say the other parts. So I'm just going to separate these out. And then I'll start following the same process as I did before, where I select the text, select who's saying it. Actually, today I'm just going to go through all the pastor parts at once, and then I'll go through all the congregation parts at once. So just give me a few minutes here. Thank you guys for being patient with me. Here's the last pastor part. And then we can go back and responsorialize the congregation part. So I'll just select this, select people here, and then we'll add in all our peoples. Now another nice thing we're going to do once I'm all done with this is that if you're doing your prayer of the church and you have a specific example of people you want to pray for, you can see that the LTMS includes kind of just this blank here. If you wanted to make it really personalized, you could add the people's names right here in your common elements. So we'll say John Doe, Jane Smith, and Clark Kent. And then when you go back to Word, when you export your bulletin, you don't actually have to retype those in. Now it's completely up to you whether or not you want to be entering those things in here in Builder and saving them every week, or if you think it would be easier for your church just to enter this in Word after you export from Lutheran Service Builder. I'm going to click Save, and then we'll go back to our bulletin. And I'll go on Ascension. Just give me 1 second there. There we go, plan this service. And hopefully when we go in here, oh, that's the wrong spot. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to go down to my prayer of the church. Search for that one we just added. And if I go all the way down to this bottom section here, it should have my prayer here. It looks like my network connection's slowing up a little bit. I'm sorry about that again. But what I would do is I would just click and drag this over into the prayer of the church, and it would save automatically like that. The next thing we're going to do, excuse me, is add a hymn in there. So I'm going to go into my worship resources, and instead of going into these common elements here, I'm going to go all the way down to hymns. It looks like I didn't save that. And when I go into hymns, we're going to redo this hymn. This was my practice hymn, so thanks guys for being patient. When you're adding a hymn in, all you need to do is click on this hymns button and then click new. Now the first thing it's going to ask you to do is add stanzas. If you say, no, I want to add my name in first, Builder is not going to let you do that. So I had that problem a little bit earlier where I wanted to just start typing in my hymn information. I didn't know what was wrong. Make sure you add the stanzas in first. So to do that, all you need to do is click this add button here. I'm just going to add in 5 stanzas. If your stanzas had particular names, you could add those in. If they had different numbering system, you could do that as well. Like if you were adding additional stanza, you can do that. Once you have your stanzas, we're going to add our hymn name here, and I'm just using a hymn example from our CPH new releases this year, but you could really use anything you wanted to. But the title of this hymn is As Stone on Living Stone is Set, and this was written by one of our editors here, Lisa Clark, along with Kevin Hildebrand, who works at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne. So you enter the name in here. If it came from a different hymnal, you can enter the number in here. You can enter a shared roll, if any. If you know the key, that's great. You can add it in there. And then you can also add the tune. Now this hymn has a new tune, so I'm not going to add that here. Again, any scripture line or related topics, do add those. It's only to your benefit to add those in there because that really gives you a more robust data set. And then when you're searching for this hymn later, you're able to find everything. I think this is everything I need on the main screen. So once I have all of this set, I'm going to go over to my text portion, and this is where I start adding in the hymn stanzas. And you can see that the stanzas are listed over here on the right-hand side. So I'll just click on this, and you can see that my cursor highlights. I find that the easiest way to do this is actually to put everything in stanza 1, and then just delete it out of here and cut and paste instead of going back and forth between whatever document you're using. So all I'm just doing Control-V to paste things in. I'm removing these extra spaces so that only stanza 2 remains. I delete everything else, then I'll click in stanza 3, follow the same process until I have all 5 of my stanzas set in here. Now we know that after I get done with this, many of you have actual hymn music and settings that maybe somebody at your church has composed, and you want to just include that in your bulletin, not just the actual text. You can do that as well. So to do that, you're going to go over to this melody tune here, and you're going to select an image. It says change image down here, and then you'll select your image file. Now these aren't like normal images. These are, of course, items that were made within an engraving software like Finale. So if you don't know much about this, be sure to ask somebody at your church or somebody who's proficient in music, and they'll tell you how to set this all up. The first thing it's going to ask you is your DPI. This is just checking that the resolution is working for this image you selected, and then your threshold. This has to do with how you scan in your images. You should always use black and white images, and again, use that music editing software. It will make things much, much easier for you. Okay, the next thing you'll want to do, crop image. And as I was practicing, the thing I learned today is if there's an extra copyright line down here like there is on this hymn, don't include that on your actual hymn image, because Builder might end up thinking that that's a stanza and ask you to assign it somewhere. We will enter our copyright information in, just not in this melody portion. This is where things start getting cool. So Builder has recognized that all those separate lines are different stanzas and started to slice them. And Builder slices them so that on the next screen you can associate the slices with each other into stanzas. And that's so eventually when you're putting your bulletin together, if you want to maybe just sing stanzas 1, 3, and 5, you could do that And only those 3 stanzas would appear on your bulletin, and you'll see how that works out in just a minute. And now is kind of the hard part, and I apologize if I don't get this right. It was a little bit tricky for me, but I think I got it worked out and I can show you guys. The next thing you'll want to do is associate your stanzas with music. So what you want to do is you'll start clicking in the stanzas. You'll click this first line, and then if you hold down Alt and then hover over, it'll associate every single line that's in that position. So you can see it picked every first line underneath the staff here. And then once I know these go with stanza 1, I'll just click on stanza 1. I'm going to do stanza 2 next, so I'm just going to click on it, hold down Alt, and then click all the second ones. You'll see they'll all appear. Then click stanza 2. Next, I'm going to click the third lines here. Make sure they're all selected with stanza 3. Once everything's selected like this, you can move on. I'm going to select stanza 4, hold down Alt, then click stanza 4. And then finally, I'll select the 5th stanza. I did that one wrong. Sorry, guys. Hold down Alt and then select stanza 5, and all of those are associated together. You could also do this not using the Alt key and then just click through them and hold down Control and click, and that will accomplish the same purpose. I'm going to click Finish here. Now if I go up in here, you can see that everything on the first line is associated, everything on the second line, third line, 4th line, and 5th line. And then if I click over here in stanza 1, you can see all the 1s are highlighted, all the 2s, all the 3s, all the 4s, all the 5s. That's how you know that you did it right. Come back to this in a little bit, but the next thing I want to do, if you had a MIDI file for the tune, you could enter it there. I want to give credit where credit is due and show you how to add the authors. So first we're going to add the author, and you can have authors be unique to text, melody, and tune, or just text. So in this case, Lisa Clark was responsible for the text, and she wrote all the stanzas. So I'll just unselect melody and tune. And as I do this, you can see that my prefix for text just says text here. Once I'm done with that, if I add another new line, I want to give credit to Kevin Hildebrand. In this case, he did the melody and the tune. So I'll write his name in there. Again, if I knew his birth date and death date, he's actually still alive. But if I knew his birth date, I could just add that in there like so. And you can see now I have our author information recorded here. The next thing I want to do is copyrights. So we're going to add a new copyright. This is actually a Concordia Publishing House copyright. And we'll add all this in here. And there'll be a little message if you don't have permission to use this. We'll see that in the bulletin view in just a minute. Make sure you add your copyright year, and you can see that up here it says copyright holder with the year and Concordia Publishing House. Okay, I'm going to save my hymn. It looks like it just saved. Now hopefully when I go back to my bulletin, or actually my service planning view, I'll be able to show you guys how this works. So here's our hymn as Stone on Living Stone is set. We're going to use this. I'm going to move it over here into the Hymn of Invocation. Oh, did something wrong. Sorry, guys. Okay, and now you can see over here, here's all my stanza text, like I added them. Here are my melody lines, my info, and my notes. Now here's where the magic happens. We're going to go over to the bulletin view right now. And if I click on melody, it shows the melody just like we had imported. But the really cool part, since we associated all those stanzas, is I can pick and choose which stanzas I want to do. So let's say I just want to do stanzas 1 and 2. I can just click those, and you'll see my music collapses just to have the first and second stanza. If I wanted to have 1 and 4, would just include 1 and 4. So this is a really nice feature. I think it's awesome, especially I know around Christmas time at churches I've been at, they often break up a hymn and they sing one verse, do a reading, sing another verse, do a reading. This is a great way to do that if you're looking to do that. And again, all the hymns that are engraved in the normal Builder software should have this functionality as well. So just a helpful tip for you to use so you can make your bulletin and your slides as helpful to your congregation as possible. I'm going to switch back over to my slides here. If anybody, has any questions, now would be a great time to ask. So again, we talked about collects, we talked about common elements, and we added our hymns. Here we'll just talk about, these are 2 examples of music notation software. If you'd like to learn more, I would encourage you to go to their website. We're not a partner with them or anything, but just in case you were wondering how those things work, how that software, how that picture got engraved, that's how you do it. Next thing we're going to talk about is custom services, and here's creative worship for the Lutheran Parish. These are pre-planned services that go together. You have all your hymns, all your text, all the As We Gather is pre-written and pre-selected for you. The purpose of today's webinar is not to get you to buy creative worship, but to show you, if you are a creative worship customer, how to use creative worship files with Lutheran Service Builder. Again, I showed you a little bit earlier how you could just import that As We Gather from the RTF file from a Word document, but I want to show you an even simpler way right now. So if we were to be setting up a service for creative worship and you had the files already on your disk, all you would need to do is import and then find that file location in your file manager. I have mine set up here already, and then select the Sunday you want to use. You can click open here, and then it'll ask you again what service this is. Since we set up the file for you, it knows it's Ascension, and then I want to plan this service. And you can see that all the unique creative worship elements are in here, all right. So you can see that the titles are here. Here's an example of the As We Gather that has all this information pre-populated. And when you go over to your bulletin view, I'm going to actually select the creative worship theme so it looks exactly like they do in creative worship. Just takes a minute here to update the style sheet. You can see that all of these elements from creative worship are together. Now, one nice thing about creative worship is that we give you a couple options for all the hymns you want to use. So if you didn't want to use the first selection, our editor Mark has put 2 options in here, and we have a couple options for prayers of the day, and this is where you can really choose. You can see that these options are already responsorialized for you. So again, this is a lot easier if you import the creative worship actual file than having to go into My Worship resources every single time for creative worship. If you're wanting to learn more about that, we actually have a free sample. It's music.cph.org/creative worship. I'm just putting this website up there in case you did want to download that free sample, or if you want to learn more and you're a current customer, that's what creative worship looks like. Okay, let's get back on our slides here. Take a look already. The other thing are the LetUsPray files, and I alluded to this earlier when I was importing them in and copy and pasting from Word. These are weekly prayers that the worship office at the LCMS puts out to you for you to use in the prayer of the church in your worship service. I just want to show you quickly how we offer the LetUsPray files to you already in Builder format. So if you go over here to the Builder website and you scroll all the way down to Downloads, it'll take you to a download page, and we have these LetUsPray files front and center right here. And so you can select whatever lectionary you like, and then you'll just click on the button right here. So I'll click Fourth Sunday of Easter. It downloads as a regular file. And then you can see that we've formatted them for you already as an LSBX file. So all you would need to do is go back into Lutheran Service Builder, you do File Import, find that file, and Builder will import the file already formatted for you. So that's just a little bit of a time-saving trick if you are interested in using those LetUsPray files. I want you to know you don't have to go through My Worship resources every single time. Again, here's the URL for that if you want to use it. I'm going to go through some final slides right here, but just wanted to let you know there's always additional information at LutheranServiceBuilder.com. Again, you can access those downloads files. Also subscribe to product updates if you want to learn about the latest updates in Builder. Definitely go there. I don't see any questions right now. Let me give you guys a few more minutes. So here is my name and my contact information again. I'm always very happy to hear from you, whether you email or call me. I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Another great resource for you is our software support team. I have their email and their phone number up there for you to reach out to whenever you need to. They're not just there if something breaks. If you have a question about something I went through and you want to learn more, just feel free to give them a call. That's why they're there. I know sometimes people are hesitant, but they're there to help you. They're all very kind and helpful in as many ways as you can. With that, I know I'm running a little bit ahead of schedule, but I think we're ready to wrap up here. I'm looking for a few additional questions and I don't see any. So I just wanted to thank you all for coming today, and we'll post the recording later, and we hope you have a great day.